to video number 2 of our Python tutorial series. In this video, we're going to be going over Python objects and data structure, and I'm going to be explaining different types of objects and this is part 1 of a 2-part series, and in this part we're going to be going over all of the things that I'm about to show you, and I'll show you examples for some of them, and then in the next video we'll be finishing off all the examples and then moving on to how we can incorporate this into actual coding. So let's get into it. So right here I have 8 different data types, and which I'm going to explain. So the first one that we have here is called the integer. And what is an integer? So basically they're whole numbers. So for example, 3 or 104 or 10,000. So it's pretty simple, it's just an integer. And now we have the floating point. A floating point number is basically just a number that has decimal points in it. So it's not exactly an integer because integers are just whole numbers, but floating points are numbers with decimal points. So for example, 17.8, 99.99, and 100.0. And you might be like, wait, 100.0 is just 100, so why isn't it an integer? And it's because even though it's 100.0, it still has this decimal point here, so it'll be classified as a floating point number. If this was just 100 and not 100.0, it would be an integer. Okay, and now we move on to the string. And basically what a string is, it's an ordered sequence of characters. So for example, hello, 14, or any type of these symbols. And let's get in and let's take a deeper look. So for strings, they have to have quotation marks around it. It could either be double quotes or single quotes, as we can see here. And this one is a string that just says hello, and as you can see, it has double quotation marks, meaning that it's a string. This one right here, it has single quotation marks, and it's still a string, but you might think, wait, it says 14 in it, so why isn't it an integer? And that's because it has quotation marks around it. So when it has quotation marks around it, even though it's a number, it'll be classified as a string because it has the quotation marks. Okay, and over here we have like a bunch of different symbols in here, and that shows that it doesn't only have to be letters or numbers. There can also be a bunch of symbols, and you can also put characters from different languages into it too, and it'll also work. Okay, now we have a list. And what a list is basically an ordered sequence of objects. So what we saw in a string was an ordered sequence of characters, but now a list is an ordered sequence of objects. So we can see an example of a list here. We use these brackets as the syntax when we make a list. And basically, you can see there's 3 objects here, 2.3, which is a floating point object. This hello string, which is the string object, and this number 8, which is the integer object. So it's just an ordered sequence of multiple different objects, and it can be as long as you want, as short as you want. It can even be empty. Okay, and now we move on to dictionaries. So what dictionaries are? They're unordered sequence of keys with values. So you might be thinking, oh, this looks like a list, but actually it has different components to it. So we have a key right here, and then we have a value. So an example would be, we have a key right here, which is the string called age, and the value of this key right here would be 15. So it'd be kind of saying like the age is 15. We have the key here, and then we have the value. And notice that it's in quotation marks, but this value right here, it can also be an integer, a floating point. It doesn't only have to be a string. Okay, and now we get on to the tuple. So what a tuple is, it's an ordered immutable sequence of objects. You might be wondering what immutable means, and you may have never heard of this word before, and if you did, that's good, but if you didn't, basically it means that once these values are set, they cannot be changed. So when you look up here with a list or a string or a dictionary, once you have these values set, you can still change them. Like for example, with the list, I can add more, I can remove some, but with the tuple, it's immutable, and basically what that means is that I can't change it. So once this is set, I can't add any more objects, I can't take away any more objects, and yeah, it's just set. And that just brings to our next one, which is a set. And what a set is, it's an unordered collection of unique objects. So here's an example right here. It's just a unique object, a unique object. And basically what this is that since it's unique, you can never have anything repeating. So if I were to have, I wouldn't be able to have 2 I wouldn't be able to have two objects that are both the string A, because that would be multiple of the same one. And since this is unique, every object in this set is not the same. But when we it's not the same. And if we go to like a list here, I can have multiple objects with the same thing. Like I can have multiple objects of 2.3, like 2.3 comma 2.3 comma 2.3, and it won't matter. But in a set, everything is unique and you can't repeat it like that. And lastly, we have the Boolean. And what a Boolean is, it's just a logical value that indicates true or false. And here's the example. I mean, it's just true and false. And you have to have these uppercase letters because that's how the syntax is for Python. We need to have the uppercase letters like that because it is case sensitive. And yeah, so there we have it with the objects and data structure. And now we'll get into a couple of examples. Okay, so here we have here I've opened up the idle shell, and if you don't know how to open this, is we downloaded this in the last episode when we were downloading Python. You can just search up for idle all caps and you'll be able to find it. Okay, but now let's look into our numbers first of all, and by numbers I mean integers and floating points. So let's just get into the basics first. So we have our integer right here. What can we do with this integer? We can do a lot of things to this integer. For example, we can add it to other integers or other numbers. So let's try that. So 5 plus 5, it's 10. What about 5 plus, let's try a floating point number, 6.5, 11.5. And we can subtract. So 10 minus 3, 7. Let's try 4.3 minus 2.2. It's 2.099. That's funny. It should be 2.1. I don't know why it shows that, but you know, we can round that up to 2. Since it's subtracting floats, it's probably like that. Okay, and how about 6.7 minus 5? 1.7. Okay, and now we can also multiply. So 3 times 3, 9. 1 times, or let's try, or not, let's not do 1. Let's do 14 times 20, 280. What about 15? What about some float numbers? 15 times 6.7, 100.5. So as you can see, we can multiply. Now let's try dividing. 15 divided by 5, 3. That's simple. And as you can see, when we divide it like this, we will get a floating point number because we will get a floating point number. We won't get a regular integer. If you want to make it an integer, I'll cover how to do that later, but basically what you want to do is you just want to use the integer function. You put in your number and you'll get the integer of it. But we'll cover that later. So if you don't understand what I just did right now, don't worry because we'll cover it in future episodes. Okay, now let's move on. How about 5.5 divided by 2? 2.75. So that works. Now what about some other types of operations like exponents or remainders? So let's try that. So using 2 of the asterisks. So 1 asterisk would be to multiply, but if I use 2 asterisks, it's to the power of. So this would be 2 to the power of 4, which is 16. And let's go on. So now this, using 2 slashes, what this basically does is what this basically does is that it actually gives us just an integer. It will not give us the floating point number. So let's try that. So 5 divided by 5 divided by 5 right here will be 1.0, but when you use 2 slashes, it'll just be 1. And let's try something that would have a remainder on it. So let's say 10 divided by 3. So 10 divided by 3 regularly, when we do it, would be 3 point and a bunch of 3's. But when we use 2 slashes, it'll just give us 3. It'll just get rid of the decimal points entirely and just give us the integer. Okay, and now there's another cool operation that you can find that when you do it, you'll get the remainder of. So this is by using the not symbol, or it's just the percentage sign, which is above the 5. So let's try 15 divided by 2. So if we do this regularly, we're gonna get 7.5. But when we use the not symbol, we're gonna get 1. And basically what this means, it's the remainder. So how many 7s go into 15? I mean, how many 2s go into 15? and that is 7. So what do we have left? We just have 1 left as a remainder, and that's how we get it. We could do this with really big numbers too. Let's say 10,024. What is the remainder of 10,024 divided by 673? 602. So it works with like pretty big numbers too. Okay, and so now let's move on to some of our strings. So in our strings, we can do, here's an example of a string, which is just hello. If I enter it, it'll just return it back with it. So as you can see, they use 1 quotation, I use 2. It doesn't really matter, both of them are strings. So here's an also example of a string. If I just do this, it's still going to be a string. And I could even type numbers, it's still a string. I could type random symbols, still a string. You can see this color, like when it turns green, that kind of represents that it becomes a string. I mean, it could be a different color for you guys, but on the idle, it'll be like this. So what can we do with this string? We can put it into print functions, and I think we've looked at the print function last episode, so you would know, you'd have a good idea of how it works. So it's saying print, let's try hello world. Here is, it'll print hello world because we printed the string. And as you can see, when we print it, it actually won't show the quotation marks around it. It'll just show the string that we put. And yeah, that's chill. So let's try print. Let's try numbers. Oops, I forgot the parentheses. So yeah, if we don't put the parentheses, it won't work. So now that we've looked at some of them, you'll probably have a pretty basic understanding of what data objects and data structure is right now in Python. And in the next videos, we're going to be looking at variable assignments. I can show you, it'll be easier to show you how to use those other types of data structures. So in the next video, we're going to be continuing on with that. And that about wraps up this video. So in this video, we basically learned about the different types of data objects, structures, and pretty brief description of each. And we've also went over what we can do with numbers, some of the things we can do with strings. But in the next video, we'll be going more in depth on all of these things. And yeah, so keep an eye out for that. So that about wraps up today's video. I hope you learned something from this video. If you didn't, you might learn something from our future videos. So make sure to subscribe to this channel and keep an eye out for them. Thanks for watching.